Welcome, dear listeners, to episode 220 of the Reformed Gamers Show, all about theology, video games, and tactical espionage action. I'm one of your hosts, Logan.
And I'm his co-host, Micah.
And joining us for this episode, joining TRG again, is the sound of the Raign himself, Jonathan. Man, welcome back to TRG.
What's going on? Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, man. So what's funny is, I've been seeing your Twitter posts, your marketing for your new music. Like, where is Sound of the Raign? I'm like, he's right here. We found him. We did it. I Scooby-Doo'd this thing, man. He's right here. So I'm glad we could solve that mystery, man.
Hey, before it was supposed to be the reveal on the 1st of July, it was a cool marketing scheme that's kind of gone south, but you guys found me. Here I am.
We found him, man. You can just call me Solid Theo, right? Because, and Micah can be Liquid Theo. And I don't know, Jonathan, you can just pick whichever character you want, I guess. I don't know who you'd be.
So Solidus.
There you go. Oh, Solidus. Yeah, there's another one. Gosh, there's so many names for the different kind of snakes, but that's getting into all the different games. Dear listeners, if by chance somehow you don't know what we're covering on this episode, we're covering the first Metal Gear Solid game, both. Well, what's interesting about this episode is Micah and Jonathan are going to be speaking from the PS1 version of the game. I just played through the GameCube version, the Twin Snakes, so
that's right.
We're gonna have some interesting perspectives on this episode here for the show. But before we get into it, just a few things I want to remind y'all about is that if you are not following us over on the YouTube channel, you are missing out on some great content. You're missing out on me clap scaring to the animatronics and Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. You might be seeing the return of the Metroid Dread playthrough that I abandoned like a couple months ago. We're going to finish that out. I got a Trails 3 review inbound. I'm getting close to finishing that game and getting all the doors open. Literally no one knows what I'm talking about when I say I'm getting all the doors open, but you get the idea. And then we've also got our Xbox Bethesda reaction up over on the YouTube channel as well. You get to see me freak out when they show off Persona, which was a lot of fun. You get to see Micah freak out when they show the Hollow Knight Silk Song, Starfield. Like, it was a fun time. So
that was a super fun time.
It was a super fun time. If y'all haven't seen that, go over to the YouTube channel. Links will be in your show notes. But other than that, let's just get rolling here, because I said this in the Discord server. If you support us on Patreon, you get access to a special channel on the Discord server. And I'm on it. I'm just being honest. This is probably the longest show notes I've written for an episode. This is a meaty game. But again, it's 2022. TRG's getting their crap together. We're doing episodes on games that we should have done a long, long time ago. And so we're going to be doing Metal Gear Solid. But before we do that, a little bit of what we have been playing. And gentlemen, let's just be honest. There's been this game that came out recently that's taken the world by storm. It's fueling our nostalgia. It's taking us back to the 90s when we were drinking Mountain Dew, singing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or for some of us, mainly speaking for myself, we were singing Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go. Yeah, the deep cut if you know what that is. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, guys. We've all played it. Let's just start off this section with that. What do we think of the game, Jonathan? Let's start off with you.
It's amazing. I just it's giving me a fix that I've been looking for and waiting for years. I'm a huge fan of beat 'em ups, and so I was glad when Streets of Rage 4 came out, and then when I saw they were doing the Ninja Turtles game, I couldn't believe it. So I'm loving it.
Yep. Micah, what about you, man?
Yeah, it has delivered on everything I could have hoped for, and really more. It feels perfect. All the sprites are beautiful. The soundtrack is absolutely incredible. Some great tracks on the soundtrack. Again, going back to Streets of Rage 4, another great soundtrack there. So yeah, it really comes out in spades and delivers that experience, that arcade experience, that Turtles in Time, whatever, that classic arcade Turtles experience that you're used to. Mm-hmm. Fantastic game. So yeah, really just a kind of a look behind the curtain. Logan, Jonathan and I, we all hopped on a session and pounded out the game on normal, in a couple hours.
It was nothing for us. We're pros. We are the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. So man, that was some of the funnest 2 hours I've had playing a game in a long, long time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it gets my highest recommendation, Logan.
Yeah, man, Mike, I think you said it best that night that we were playing that close to the end when we were finishing up. You're like, I don't think I've ever played a game in a while, or I haven't played a game in a while that I've had the biggest grin on my face for the last like however many hours we've been playing. And man, that's literally it. You know, I grew up with the Ninja Turtles. They're up there with Batman and Spider-Man for me. Like I always had those going at some point. And when this game was announced, I was curious but nervous because like, man, please don't screw this up. But then I saw who was working on it, the same team that did the Streets of Rage 4 game. Like, we're fine. This game's going to be good. I didn't know it would be this good. Like, it's you know, friend of the show, Derek Smith, has called this game the Sonic Mania of Ninja Turtle games. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Accurate. Yeah.
That's pretty good. It's a ton of fun, man. There's so many like little Easter eggs. There's nods to the movies. There's nods to the comics. There's characters in there you probably haven't seen in a while. And each fighter like plays differently to where they feel differently. You know, April O'Neil is really fast, but she doesn't hit as hard. But Splinter, he's slow because, you know, he's old, but he hits like a freight train. And then my boy Mikey, he just bouncing all over the place. Like he just shotgun like multiple things of Mountain Dew. And it's awesome. But it's so good. I cannot get over how good this game is. This is definitely this is definitely a heavy contender for me for my game of the year pick right now, right there with Elden Ring, which is probably crazy to hear.
Wild.
But it's so good. I love this game.
This is the point I love to bring up all the time. We're really eating a buffet of great games. We're in a great era of gaming, I think, because you can talk about games like Elden Ring and games like Shredder's Revenge in the same conversation and say, like, yeah, these are both game of the year contenders. I love that.
Yeah. It's so good. It's so good.
I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of getting in like a 6-man or woman lobby.
No,
but like it's really easy because if you get under just like one other person, like while you're in the player select screen, like 4 or 5 people will just jump on like instantly, you know. And I mean, when I say it is mayhem, like, I mean, you can almost like put your controller down and sit back and watch. It's like you hear it. I mean, I recorded a little bit of footage on my PlayStation, but it is insane. Like it beefs up the difficulty, the amount of characters, and it's amazing.
I noticed that too when I was playing solo on the lowest difficulty settings. I think it's called chill or whatever. And I was just destroying enemies in 2 hits. I'm like, oh man, that does scale the difficulty quite a bit when you add more people, because I'm just like wrecking shop now.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny you say that it's mayhem, because like when just the 3 of us were playing, it was pretty chaotic. But man, adding 3 more people to it, I bet it's even more crazy.
Yeah, I did the old classic, like looking at the wrong player, like thinking I'm someone else. Wait, I'm over here running against the corner.
I was doing that all the time. And I realized that when you do the high five, the person that initiates it is giving 2 of their energy blocks to the other person.
Oh, that's how that works.
Yeah, so I thought it was like you both of your energy just goes up. I think I saw that on like online or something, but yeah.
Good to know. All right, that makes more sense.
It does make more sense. So I got to know this before we kind of start dialing in a little bit more. Who are y'all's favorite characters? Who have you gotten to play with? Who have you enjoyed? Me personally, I really love Mikey because he's my favorite turtle, and he plays, to me, that's my exact play style. Hopping all over the place, bouncing around, swinging the nunchucks around. It's just perfect for me. I love how they got Mikey designed. But what about you, Jonathan?
I'm probably gonna have to say Raph. I've been playing with him a lot. I had got level 10 with Leo, so I was playing with him a lot, and so Raph was my next highest. So I just been kind of grinding it out with him. But as I've been playing, I've just been like, you know, loving the move set, and you know, he's very strong, but you have to get in a lot closer, you know. But I love his super. He can kind of move around with it versus staying in one spot. So I'm gonna go with Raph.
Right on. Micah, how about you?
Yeah, I usually main with Don on these kind of games, but if you there's a way, I should say, to unlock Casey Jones, and I got to go with Casey Jones, man.
Yeah.
He is so awesome. I love that character. So yeah, just the fact that he was in the game, I was flipping out. So Casey Jones is the easy answer. But though, if not him, I would say I would agree that Mikey is a lot of fun with you because he's really great for combos because of how quick he is and just slinging the nunchucks around. He can really juggle super well. Usually not a huge Mikey fan, but yeah, he's great in this game. Yeah.
Fair enough. Right on. Well, I know a lot of folks in our community are playing this game. So as always, dear listeners, if you want to play this game with us or you want to get a group going, Facebook group, Discord, hit us up. If you see me online, definitely send me a message because I'm open to playing it. I'm trying to get the platinum trophy, but even if we're doing stuff or I'm helping you get to the story, I don't care. I just have fun playing this game. This game is so much fun. I just can't get over it. So if you guys want some people to group up with, definitely hit us up, and we'll hop in your party. But Jonathan, let's dial it down a little bit as far as what you've been playing, because it hasn't been TMNT. Shredder's Revenge is the only thing you've been playing. I know that might surprise people because of how, like, whenever we're on PlayStation, that's what they see us playing. But what else have you been getting into?
Yeah, I'm attempting to get back into Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
So I've re-downloaded it. I started playing the original, and then I just realized that because I wanted to kind of refresh my memory,
right.
I could appreciate all the upgrades and changes to the remake. But I was like, I'm not gonna finish this.
Yeah.
So I re-downloaded the remake. So I plan on playing that, and also Fall Guys.
Oh man,
Fall. I look forward to. I played that when it first came out. I bought it, and why was it? It might have been a PlayStation Plus game. I can't remember.
It was.
But okay, yeah. I played that like a lot. I mean, it was so fun. I could just sit there, laugh, play it over and over. So, and I always play The Last of Us, the multiplayer.
Factions,
I like that too as well.
Right on. Well, Jonathan, I don't know if you're aware, but Fall Guys is actually a Christian video game. Micah pointed that out a couple episodes ago during one of our Patreon
rides. Say something else.
No. So what better game to be playing? I mean, you could be doing Fall Guys or you could be playing Doom. Either one is a great Christian video game. So, but that's a good one to go with. It's funny, man. I saw that Fall Guys went free to play. I think it was today or yesterday.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
And man, I've seen so many people playing that game now, like whether it's PlayStation, Steam, like it's everywhere. Like that game is blowing up now that it's free to play. So that's
still
really cool to
such
see.
a fun game, man. I dabble with it from time to time, and I even booted it up today just to see what the free to play was like. Had a little bit of a hard time finding a game because it took a while to get people having a little bit of a bumpy launch with the free to play, but man, it's still so much fun. I love Fall Guys. That's like a perennial to me. I'll come back to that every so often.
Yeah.
Right on, man. That's crazy. It's cool to see. Micah, let's switch it up with you, man. What have you been playing? I think one of those games, me and you have played a little bit. But
I'll save that one to the end so we can sort of transition over to you. But I've still been, I won't speak long about this. I've still been kind of hacking away at MLB The Show. That game is still great. Still doing my road to the show with my creative player. It really is like a baseball RPG. You have your stats, like your equipment, your gear. It's like all like your bats and helmets and batting gloves and cleats, all this stuff. It's like gear for Elden Ring. And you have stats and like your contact and your plate vision and all these like stats that you can level up. It really is like a baseball RPG, guys. So
I'm just picturing some like giant dragon thing swooping into the baseball field, and you gotta fight it in the game with your baseball bat.
That's in the DLC, hopefully.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, still playing the show. That's super good. Shredder's Revenge we talked about. And before I talk about my last game, which Logan we've both been playing, PlayStation Plus recently relaunched. So I hopped in on that Super Wario sale for the kind of being indoctrinated into the subscription for a while at a discount. So I got 1 year of the highest subscription, or not essential. Essential is the base one. Premium. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Got there. And been playing some PS1 classics.
Right on,
So
man.
checked out the library there. It's pretty small right now as far as PS1 games. They have like Siphon Filter. They have this great puzzle game that I used to love called IQ. And I've been playing, and the one that I've been playing the most that's kind of, it's been funny. My kids have sort of latched on to it too because they've never played it or seen the series or had any experience with it, is Tekken 2. Started getting on that. And we have been really enjoying just kind of going through the single player. And if you beat the game with, each character, you unlock a new character. So we're trying to unlock all the characters, and we're just having fun going through that and playing through all the characters. So yeah, enjoying some classic PS1 action with Tekken 2, which thank the Lord it's NTSC version and not PAL version over here in North America. So that all runs well and is good. And then the last game, been playing, Logan. I know we've both been playing this, and I think we both beat it. The Quarry, the latest horror game from Supermassive, who has been making the Dark Pictures anthology games for, I think, Bandai Namco, but is known most popular for Until Dawn for Sony. Back on the is PS4, I think, right? Early PS4.
I think so.
So The Quarry is kind of that same teen horror genre. It's very much like pick your own path, kind of like Detroit and all. I think you know how these games go. You got to keep everyone alive is the name of the game in these kind. And man, this one, to me, it goes back to those old Until Dawn roots where I haven't played any of the Dark Pictures games. I heard they're not as good.
I'll talk about it when I get to my thing. Okay. But yeah, in short, they're not that great.
Okay, so but this one looked great from the get-go, from the first trailer. I'm like, oh man, sign me up, I'm in. And man, it's super fun. It has a couple of weird, like, it's not super fun to control, and the camera's a little weird. Very close up and kind of claustrophobic in some instances. Not a great camera. But it's all about those decisions, man. It nails that, like, okay, I picked A. Oh, but what if I had picked B? Oh, what would B? It nails that, man. That, like, oh, I should have gone with the other route. And that is where that's the bread and butter for these games, in my opinion. So if it has a competent story and plot, which it does, has a good plot. I like the overall plot. The dialogue is hit or miss, kind of with that teen horror. It can be sometimes cringy, and sometimes like, oh, that was pretty good and well delivered. It's a mixed bag there. But man, I had a fun time with it. Beat the game, and I'm going back through to try to get like the best ending where everyone lives, because I definitely had 2 or 3 characters die in my playthrough. So yeah, Logan, how about you?
Yeah, man. I won't get into spoilers because I know Jonathan over here hasn't played it yet, and he's trying to get the wife to play it with him. So, which is actually how I played the game. My wife and I played Until Dawn together. All the way through. We played the Dark Pictures anthology stuff all the way through. We skipped Man of Medan because it was so boring. The other two in there was House of Ashes and Little Hope. Yeah, Little Hope was all right. House of Ashes was definitely the best one out of the 3. That's not saying much because the bar is kind of still low. But this one, man, this took us right back to playing Until Dawn. We loved just kind of the eeriness of the different things, of the different characters, and some of the fun scares, and kind of arguing about, well, what should I pick? I'm like, I don't know. This is the character you're playing. You make the decision. It's like, I don't want to make the decision. That back and forth. So it was a lot of fun. And man, just even looking up what would have happened if we chose the other option, we were just like, oh man, I'm really glad we picked this then, because that would have ended horribly if we chose the other one. It's just, man, it's not a perfect game, but it is a lot of fun. It's man, I'll have to go back and play Until Dawn. I know Until Dawn was kind of a gory game, but this game ramps the gore up exponentially. There's one thing that it does. I'll just leave it there. There's one thing it does multiple times. I'm just like, man, this is, like,
it's a lot of blood in the game.
Like I feel my gag reflex kicking in a little bit. I'm like, man, this is the game that does that. So that's pretty intense. But apart from that, like, it's the typical tropes of like the summer horror slasher thing that you'd expect. And there's some things in there that are, I'm just going to say we had fun with it. I don't want to go any further. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that hasn't played it yet. But man, it's it's not better than Until Dawn. I'll say that, but it's up there with it.
Yeah.
I'll say that. And so it's man, it's a good time. If you like horror games,
Well,
it's a good
the
time.
thing about these two games specifically, and I'll give it back to you, Logan, is this teen horror. It's like you're not only trying to keep everyone alive, but you have all these like relationship dynamics going on too that you're trying to kind of make happen a certain way. So yeah, a lot of just, again, those decisions are really good.
Yeah. And it's good. I don't really have much else to add to it. It's just we had fun with it. We enjoyed it. We were like, man, it's so good to have one of these games from the studio that's good in comparison to the Dark Pictures anthology stuff. And then my wife, for whatever reason, watched Jacksepticeye play through the entire game, and she's like, oh man, I want to see what the different options were. And she was like, he actually chose a lot of the same ththings we did, so this was kind of pointless. I'm like, oh, all right. So, but yeah, cool game. Very, very cool game. Well, I don't really have a whole lot to add as far as what I've been playing. Apart from those are the ones that have been kind of taking up a lot of time. I think people know that there's a Trails 3 review coming. I mentioned that at the top of the show, but I don't know if anybody else really knew this about me. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I like Gundam. Mobile Suit Gundam. I like building them. It's a lot of fun. Don't follow me on Twitter if you don't want your Twitter feed to be spam full of my builds in progress. But after I finished one of my builds, I was like, man, I want to play like a Gundam video game, like one where I just pick a robot, go fight things, and just have fun with it. Man, there's not a whole lot of Gundam video games, I've realized, at least on modern consoles. And if they are on modern consoles, they're apparently not that great. And I'm like, man,
right.
where's the Dynasty Warriors Gundam games that I played on 360? Where are those at? Unfortunately, they're nowhere to be found. But as I was looking for different games to play, I tried some of the ones that you kind of see talked about in circles, like Gundam Versus, just 2v2 online playing. Didn't really care for it. There's the Battle Operation 2, which is the free-to-play game, but I didn't like it because it felt way too much like a mobile game, and it just didn't play that great. But as I started digging deeper, I found this game with an absurdly long title called Mobile Suit Gundam Extreme versus Maxi Boost On.
Yes.
That's a title. But apparently this is like a port or remaster or whatever of like this fighting game that is apparently super popular in Japan. It's like one of the top fighting games over there. There's people over there that spend like hundreds and thousands of dollars in the arcade playing this game. And there's a professional league. I found out PlayStation did at EVO a couple months ago. So this game is big, and so it still has the combat from the Gundam Versus game I played that I didn't care for at first, but as I kind of got more into it, I'm like, man, this is really deep. This is really complex. This reminds me why I'm bad at fighting games, because there's so many layers to it. But if you stick with it long enough and you try to wrap your head around some of the controls, it's pretty cool. It's pretty action packed, and it can get pretty frenetic, pretty fast. Unfortunately, it seems like the online is kind of dead for it now. This game came out in 2020. So I don't think I'll be going for the platinum on it anytime soon, but it's a good time. I mean, I just think the barrier of entry is pretty high to where it's not as accessible to people who are looking for a little bit more of a streamlined experience, like that Dynasty Warriors Gundam sort of thing.
Isn't there a new free-to-play Gundam game coming out soon, Logan?
Yes, that's Gundam Evolution is one that's coming out. That one I played the beta for and liked it quite a bit, but it's not out just yet. So I'll definitely be playing that when that comes out. Because it's basically Overwatch with Gundams, and I'm like, okay, you just combine two of my favorite things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be good. And there's like a SD strategy Gundam game that has like the little chibi versions of the Gundams coming out soon. So I'll be keeping my eye out for that. So we'll see how that goes. But apart from that, I got back into Monster Hunter Rise on PC because the new DLC comes out the week after this episode releases to public feeds, and you have to be star rank 7 in order to play it. So I'm trying to get back up there so that way I can hop into that. And
so Logan, are you more of a Rise or Monster Hunter Worlds person?
So, man, I'm going to be honest. I'm so far removed from World. I don't remember a lot of what was in that game. I do remember this, that when I played Monster Hunter Rise, I distinctly remember thinking, man, this is a step back from World, kind of like in a negative sense. So Probably if I were to go play World, I'd probably prefer that. But I've been playing Rise for so much that I'm like, I'm used to this. This is fine.
Sure.
So it is what it is. It's got a grapple hook too. So I mean,
very
you
nice.
can argue with that. I know a friend of the show, Nate's probably his ears are gonna perk up at that. Like, what's that? Grapple hook in a game? Oh, I'm there. And then the last game I'm going to just briefly mention is Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. I'm playing that as part of just thanking thanking people for the support over on YouTube channel, getting over 1,000 subscribers. Episode 4 should be up by the time this episode releases. So if you want to watch me get scared 10 ways from Sunday, go check it out and have fun with it. I don't know why. I was looking back on the first episode, and like when things scared me, like I did this weird clap thing. Like I dropped the controller and clapped, and I'm like, I was watching myself. I'm like, what am I doing? This not what you want to do when you're playing this game. So if you guys want to watch that, it's just episode 1. It's closer to the end. It's doesn't make any sense to me, but it's a whole thing.
Oh man, that's good.
So yeah, that's I can't recommend it. Clapping at the monsters doesn't do anything. But yeah, so that's over on YouTube. Anyway, before we get into the topic of the show, quick reminder. Gosh, words are hard and we're not even done with the episode yet. Quick reminder to rate and review the show on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, and share the episodes too if you think that someone would benefit from it. I know we just did a episode on evangelism, so maybe if you got a pastor or someone in church you want to encourage with that stuff, you can send that to them. I think that was a pretty good episode, personally speaking. But if you think it's good as well, definitely share that. As always, if you go to Chick-fil-A and you have access to their PR system, their PA system, just hook your phone up and start playing it through there.
There you go.
Without further ado, let's just stop beating around the bush. We've had people, as Snake said,
kept you waiting, huh?
We've kept people waiting for a Metal Gear Solid episode for so long that we're finally going. It's happening. Finally happening. So as always, if you're new to the show, one thing I do want to kind of keep you aware of is when we do these game focus or these episodes that are focused on a specific game, there's a point where we'll mention like spoiler warning, before you go any further. If you don't want the game spoiled, don't listen past this point. So if you want a game like that's almost 20, 30 years old or whatever it was, spoiled or not spoiled, that's up to you. I kind of fumbled that sarcastic joke on that one, but you get the idea. If you don't want to spoil it because you plan on playing it, we'll warn you. Now, here's the thing with this game is that there's technically 2 versions of it. There's the one on PS1, there's the GameCube version. I brought my GameCube copy here because I was going to read what's on the back of the box as far as a story synopsis, but it doesn't really help. It just talks about, it starts it off making you feel like you're going to play Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, where it's like 2 of the greatest games of all time, Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, are fused together to form the Nintendo GameCube classic Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes. I was like, okay, well, that doesn't help me much then. But then it goes on to say that as Solid Snake, your mission is to rescue hostages from an Alaskan military installation and prevent a terrorist group from launching a nuclear strike. It's a very simplistic way to describe Metal Gear Solid. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of the game. That's a very brief synopsis. Of course, you encounter an eclectic cast of different characters and enemies, and the story goes places. But I'm not going to spoil that because, again, I think this is a game that's worth experiencing and having those wait, what the heck is happening moments, because, man, are they good. Now, normally when I do development highlights for these kinds of episodes, I don't really find a whole lot, right? But for this one, I found a good amount, to the point where, like I said, I think at the top of the show, this is the longest show notes I've written for an episode in a long, long time. So this actually is a lot earlier than what I would normally do a spoiler alert, but because of some of the things I'm going to get into here in the development history, specifically the changes that they made when they translated it to the different regions, it's going to spoil some gameplay elements. So if you don't want the game spoiled, this is your opportunity to duck out, get into a box like Solid Snake, walk away, go play the game, and then come back and listen to this episode. So you've had plenty of opportunities. You have plenty of spoiler warnings. I'm sure Skinner's probably going to add in one of those like alert sounds when the guards see the classic that sound there. So yeah, you've had plenty of opportunity to pause the episode and duck out so you don't get it spoiled. So let's get into some development highlights for this game. Now, this game was originally intended to be an action game featuring modern military combat. So like basically think not exactly like Call of Duty, but kind of in that same vein of like you're going to have realistic military action. It's going to be high octane action game. Basically wanted to ramp up Metal Gear 1 and 2 and take it to the next level. And 3, which is what this game is. But due to hardware limitations, Kojima had to shift the game or shift the perspective of the game to something else that was based more on the idea of like a prisoner escaping, kind of having that in mind. And Kojima took influences from things like The Great Escape and James Bond to influence not just the game, but really the entire series. And this game specifically began development in 1995, which, fun fact about this game, the character Meryl and the organization Foxhound were actually characters in the Police Knots games that Kojima worked on that were released on the 3DO interactive gaming system, which I was like, I didn't even know Kojima worked on other stuff before Metal Gear.
I knew about Police Knots, but I didn't know Meryl and Foxhound were from that. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's a cool little thing. If any of you have a 3DO and you have Police Knots, go back and check it out for yourself. Now, Kojima named the game Metal Gear Solid instead of Metal Gear 3 because he felt the first two games were not widely known, due in large part to them not being released in North America at the time that they were released. Of course, if you have the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, those are bundled into it on the disc, so you can play Metal Gear 1 and 2 on there. The designers wanted to focus the game on realism, and Kojima stated that if the player isn't tricked into believing the world is real, then there's no point in making the game. And when I read that, I was like, man, that fits because this game uses a lot of language you hear in the real world, but it's a little scary when you consider Metal Gear Solid 2 and how it kind of predicted the future in a lot of ways. So Kojima's onto something with that one there. Now, it's also been noted that Solid Snake's physique was based off Jean-Claude Van Damme, the classic 90s action hero. And his facial appearance was based on Christopher Walken, of all people.
Wow.
We gotta stop Metal Gear. I can't do Christopher Walken. If anybody else can,
we've got to stop Metal Gear.
It is, which is funny because like I'm sitting there thinking about and listening how Snake talks. I'm like, I can kind of hear Christopher Walken doing this, and so now I want someone to mod Christopher Walken's voice in Metal Gear Solid. So Snake, anytime he talks, it's just Christopher Walken.
If I heard him say "kept you waiting," I would just die of laughter. Kept you waiting.
So good. Kept you wait. Anyway, so when they were trying to figure out the different camera angles and how the game would look, Kojima actually used things like Lego blocks and toy figurines to help plan how they'd set things up. And they kind of wanted to go for more of a 2D, 3D blend aspect. That's kind of why the camera is overhead throughout most of the game. And one of these cool things, so in the game, Gray Fox, aka Cyborg Ninja, I think I got that mixed up, but you get the idea of the character I'm talking about, has this cloaking effect. And this cloaking effect, like they were working on it, but it's actually the result of a bug in the game's code. So as Bob Ross would say, happy little accidents. They were like, hey, this works, let's go with it. And Gray Fox used it, Otacon used it, and I think some of the soldiers used it at one point on the elevator. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the crazy thing. I love doing these classic games and talking about them because it always blows my mind when I look at the makeup of the team and how many people there are. This game was developed by a team of only 20 people in 1995 when they started working on it. That's
how it was done back then.
And they made some of the greatest games of all time, longest lasting ones. We talk about Super Metroid, we talk about Final Fantasy VI, we talk about Metal Gear Solid, like Chrono Trigger even. We talk about these classic seminal kind of tentpole games, and it's like a small handful team put it together. So it's just really cool. And Kojima actually preferred small teams at this time because it allowed him to get to know everyone and care for them if they were sick, or just kind of check on them and care for them and be a tight knit group. But I'm like, man, Kojima's a pretty rad dude for that. So that's pretty cool. Now, this game released on September 3rd, 1998 in Japan, October 20th in North America in 1998, and then Europe didn't get the game until February 22nd, 1999. And certain changes were made when the game was released outside of Japan, such as mailing, quoting only Chinese proverbs, and then giving them like a Japanese twist. They kind of changed that a little bit to where they would change the pool to where it's either not as many, or they would change some of the proverbs to something else that the region would know better. And then they also included 3 difficulty settings when the game was released outside of Japan, which PTL for that, because I'm terrible at these games. And then on June 25th, 1999, Metal Gear Solid Integral was released that offered the option of a Japanese or English dub, so it had both language options, and it included the famous VR missions that are included in kind of the later editions of the game. The game came to PC in late 2000, and the game was remade for the Nintendo GameCube in March 2004. That was developed by Silicon Knights, and the game's cutscenes were designed in-house by Konami, not at Silicon Knights. And this was overseen by Konami themselves and a well-known Japanese action director, which makes sense because some of the cutscenes in Twin Snakes, I'm like, I don't remember this in the original game, but this is
way
really
more out there. It's like a John Woo movie, like cranked up to the max. Yeah,
and it's so stinking cool. It's so good. The story remained largely the same, but there were some things that were changed, such as like May, Natasha, Naomi's accents were lessened a little bit. Gray Fox's voice actor was recast to Rob Paulson, and the gameplay enhancements were added, like a first-person view and the ability to hang from bars on the walls. So that's pretty much it for development history. Mike, I think, did you have something for this section here that you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, actually, I meant to bring it up when we were talking about Shredder's Revenge, but Cam Clark, the voice actor for Solid Snake, he goes under the name James Finders, I think, the pseudonym in the credits for Metal Gear Solid. But Cam Clark, he is the voice of Liquid Snake and of Leonardo in the old show and in Shredder's Revenge. Fun fact. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's got a lot of voice acting credits in video games. He's in like Star Wars, Clone Wars. He's in lots of video games. But yeah, he played Liquid Snake and Leonardo in the old 80s cartoon and in the recent Shredder's Revenge. So yeah, I wanted to put that out there as well.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So I basically beat up Leonardo at the end of this game. That makes me feel great. But no, that's pretty good. He's a good voice actor. Man, I have like the first season of the old Ninja Turtles series. I want to go and watch that tonight. Now, as far as reception goes for this game has so many accolades. It's received so many awards over the years. It's received things such as being credited for pioneering and popularizing stealth video games and cinematic video games, which is funny because Kojima is like super into movies. So of course, like, he would kind of flex those muscles in the cutscenes of his games, because I think it's in one of his books. He wanted to be, he wanted to be a movie director for the longest time, but he wound up doing video games. And so, I mean, good for him. This game is regarded as one of the greatest and most important video games of all time by both Game Trailers and Filibuster Cartoons. I don't know who Filibuster Cartoons is, but I know who Game Trailers is and was. So that's pretty high praise. The game received critical acclaim at launch, still talked highly of this day. We're going to talk highly of it here. Let's kind of get into that now let's just switch to kind of our first experiences with the game, our first impressions, just kind of how we really came across the game, how we played it, some of our memorable moments, and things like that. Jonathan, let's start with you, man. First of all, how did you come across Metal Gear Solid?
If I'm just going to give you guys a heads up, if you guys need to like cut me off or stop, because I could just talk forever about this game. There was an old magazine back in the day called the Official PlayStation Magazine, I believe.
Yes.
And they used to come with these demo discs.
Yes.
So a friend of mine had let me borrow this disc because it had the demo for Metal Gear on it. And I was familiar with Metal Gear on the NES, and, I had played it. So it was cool seeing that there was like an updated version of it. I wasn't as familiar with Kojima and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So this is when the DualShock controller had first came out for
Yes.
the PS1. And so, I mean, it's mind blowing. It was like a movie. Like I'm sitting here playing the game, and then like the words are on the screen, like the credits, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like the production value. I couldn't believe this was a game that I was playing. You know, I can knock on the walls and they can hear me. I can run the other way. It was amazing. And so then when I get on the elevator, because the demo got you as far as
I think maybe to the ventilation shaft.
Yeah. And so when you get on the elevator and the controller started vibrating, I was like, oh my gosh, like I lost my mind. I just, so I played that demo over and over and over. I mean, every nook and cranny,
Yes.
a surveillance camera, like everywhere I was going, So when the game came, matter of fact, I played it so much that when I first heard David Hayter's voice as Solid Snake, I didn't like it because it was the demo had the Japanese voice actor on it. And so I was like, I'm not feeling this guy's voice. But of course, now it's like iconic. Like I love Hayter as the voice of Solid Snake. So, that was how I first got introduced to it. And it's my favorite video game of all time. I probably would have to say that. I've played it tons of times.
Yeah, man. Micah, I see you kind of reminiscing there a little bit. Or maybe you're in pain. You got heartburn or something?
No, it warms my heart, man. And so hearing everything that you just said is that's right up my alley. Official PlayStation Magazine demo disc. Shout out. So I mentioned it's called Intelligent Cube. IQ is the PlayStation 1 game. Yeah. That was on the very first issue of Official PlayStation Magazine demo disc. That and Parappa the Rapper were on that demo disc. And I played those games so much. And Ace Combat 2, I think. Anyway. And yeah, when that Metal Gear Solid demo disc came out, Jonathan, dude, I played that. I played it so much before the game came out. I knew that level, that first area, and then how to get past the first couple of guards into the vent shaft. I knew everything like the back of my hand. So when I got into the rest of the game, I felt like, what am I supposed to do now? It was really weird. But yeah, everything you just said just resounded with me so perfectly. That's exactly how I felt. Again, going back to the DualShock, that was right when that Metal Gear Solid was the game that made me say no to the D-pad and finally use an analog stick for a game. And I forced myself to do it because at first I didn't like it. I was like, this feels weird. But yeah, that was such a revolutionary controller at the time. And it wasn't just that the elevator was rumbling. Is like when the hind D would fly across, it would get harder as you get closer, and then it kind of tapers off. And I was like, what is this thing doing? And I'm gonna say this a lot probably on this episode, but the amount of things that this game did that no other game was doing at this time are just crazy. It's like tons and tons of things that no one was thinking about doing. No one was executing like this. No one had thought about doing this gameplay mechanic like this. It was unheard of kind of stuff. So every 30 minutes, hour, you're like, oh, I can blow a hole in the wall and I can tell that because there's no paint there, or I can. There's just so many things. But anyway. So yeah, we'll get into that, but it was simply mind blowing. I was 15 years old when the game came out, and going back to the magazines, all the magazines wouldn't shut up about it before the game came out. They're like, "Wait, man, this game." I'm like, "What is Metal Gear Solid?" I'd heard of Metal Gear 1 and 2, but I hadn't played them at the time. And when I played that demo disc, it was over. I was like, "Dude, what is this? This is incredible." So yeah, it completely, Jonathan, I'm with you. I think it's my favorite game. This and Shadow of the Colossus are like 1A and 1B for me. And this, it still holds up. Booted up the first third or so of the game the other day on PlayStation 1. And while graphically, yeah, it's a PlayStation 1 game, and there's things about, it looks ugly in a lot of aspects, but there are so many things that still hold up today. The voice acting still holds up. The plot and the overall story still hold up. A lot of the gameplay mechanics, not the controls per se, but the actual gameplay, it holds up.
Yeah.
So it's such a masterclass in so many departments. It set the standard, and people are still kind of chasing this series, I guess I'll say, in a lot of ways. It's because Kojima was such a trendsetter. Every new Metal Gear that came out, people are like, okay, what's he doing now? And like trying to chase those things, and they're always behind. They're always a step behind. This game was simply marvelous when it came out. If you played this game and you knew the landscape of video games in 1998 and you came away unimpressed, I don't know what to tell you. I simply don't know what to tell you. Like, you don't have good taste in games. You just don't. So that's where I'm at with Metal Gear Solid, man. I've got a lot more to say, but that's what I've got for now.
Right on. Man, I feel really bad saying this because my first experience with Metal Gear, I don't think it was a demo disc. I think my brother actually had bought it for his PlayStation. And I was a Nintendo kid growing up. Like, I had all the Nintendo stuff. I didn't do PlayStation when it came out. But my brother had a PlayStation, so whenever I'd go over to their house, and if I was waiting on him or whatever, I'd hop on there and play his PlayStation for a little bit. And I remember putting this game in and playing it, and I'm like, man, this looks cool, but these controls suck. I'm bad at this. I'm not gonna play. Like, I was young, stupid baby, dumb Theo brain is what it was, and so I didn't play it when it first came out. I saw it a little bit, tried to play it a little bit, and it wasn't until the GameCube that I saw Twin Snakes came out, and I was like, oh man, the GameCube's getting like all these cool PlayStation games that I never got to play, and now I get a chance to play them. So now I get to play Resident Evil. Yeah, this is a huge mistake. This game scares the crap out of me. What's this Metal Gear game? Let me play that. That looks way less scary. And kind of similar to y'all, when I booted this game up, and it opens up with Snake kind of, swimming through the water or going through the water, sneaking into the base, and has the opera music playing. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, is this a movie? Did I rent a movie? Because if so, I'm okay, because this is cool. This is a flashy opening, and I love it. But just from that moment on playing it, I'm like, dude, this game is nuts. This is like, how when you're in school and you look at the cool kids, you're like, man, those kids are so cool, right? You look at this game and you're like, man, this game is so cool. Like, it's just, Snake is like one of the coolest video game characters of all time. Like, he might get canceled in today's culture, but at the time I'm like, man, he's like flirting with the girls. He's hitting on them. He's super cool. He's cool, calm, and collected. He's got that gravelly voice where, he's so cool. He's like doing the action moves. He's fighting. But what really sealed this game into my brain was, and again, kind of this will transition to our favorite moments, was that boss fight with Psycho Mantis. When he was sitting there like, let me test out my powers on you. Put your controller on the ground. I'll make it move. And I'm like, no, you won't. That's stupid. And of course, I didn't put two and two together. He's using the rumble thing to do all that. But I put it on the ground and the controller started moving. I was like, oh no, this is scary. And then he's like, pick up the controller and I'll read your mind. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. My dog's getting freaked out now from listening to me talk about it. He's like, oh, I see you like to play a lot of Super Smash Brothers Melee. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's reading my mind. I'm like, Mom, will take the game back. It's cursed. But like, I was like, this is so trippy. This is so cool. And then later in the game, like you're trying to survive the interrogation things. You have to like smash the A button really fast. I'm like, man, my arm's getting sore. And Snake says, oh, my arm's a little sore. And then like Naomi's like, well, she did something in the nano machine. She's like, put the controller on your arm and it'll feel good. I'm like, okay. And then it vibrated. I'm like, this game is so cool. It knows what I'm feeling. This is crazy. So it's just, I don't think there's any game that immerses you into its world quite like this. When Kojima said that thing during the development highlights I read, like, if you can't trick the player into believing this world is real, then it's not worth it. He nailed it with this game. And I never finished it back on the GameCube. It wasn't until I got a PS3 a couple of years ago, got the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, finished it there. I'm like, this game still holds up. And it's a PlayStation 1 game. Holy crap, this game is good. And then I played Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes for this episode, finished it. I'm like, there's some things I don't like. There's some things that didn't hold up. But man, for the most part, this game is still stupid good. Like, well, that's the episode. I think there's nothing else to really say. This game's great. No, I'm kidding. Let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite memories, and this might transition into some of our favorite boss fights with, I guess we can lead with this because Alex Castellanos writes in and says, please rank for us the order of best Metal Gear Solid bosses from least to greatest. And he included a list for reference. So Alex, thank you for writing in. Thank you for giving us that list. The bosses are Revolver Ocelot, Vulcan Raven, Tank and No Tank, Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf at the tower and the snow area, Gray Fox, the Hind D, Metal Gear Rex, and Liquid Snake at the end of the game. So Jonathan, let's kick it to you, man. What was, you don't really like to order all of them, but at least like what's your most favorite boss and your least favorite?
This is really hard because I would say at the bottom of the list, the Hind D, because it's not something with as much personality, but even though it still was a cool experience. And I think that was one of the boss fights I had the most trouble with, that I can remember. But the Sniper Wolf fight, the first time you come across her, and the reason I bring that up as one of the best boss fights is because the tension of everything that kind of builds up to it. Meryl was just standing there, and then you see the infrared dot, going over her body, and then Snake kind of, which I think his reaction time, I was like, yeah, Snake, come on. You should have caught it a few seconds earlier, but then he's like, Meryl, get down. David Hayter just nailed that. And then, Sniper Wolf lit her up. I thought when she reached for the gun, because I hadn't seen it in so long or played it in so long, I thought she was going to just shoot at the gun. And she shot her in the arm. I was like, dog. So,
and then took out both of her legs. I was watching this on the GameCube, and I'm like, dude, this is intense. Oh man. And
so then you have the codec comes on, and I love the drawn codec.
Yes,
anime. I wish they had kind of brought those back or kept them. Yeah. And then you have the music playing, and then it's so intense. Okay, I have to go find this weapon just to fight her. But the whole time you're going back to look for the weapon, you're in the back of your mind, you're thinking man, she's just laying there. What happened? Is she okay? And then you get back there, and then the boss music's still playing, and then that was that fight was intense, there's so many little Easter eggs. There's stuff that I didn't find out or realize about that game until years later, not to stray off subject, but it makes me think about Gray Fox as far as mentioning the boss fights, but the part where you're trapped in the cell and you're trying to get out, and then Otacon comes and brings you the food. There's a couple other ways that you can get out of there. Yeah. That stuff that I came across on accident or saw in a magazine, and I'm just like, Kojima really thought of everything. It is insane. But definitely. So I'm gonna put Sniper Wolf up there at the top. Oh man, the Vulcan Raven fight was intense. Ocelot, he's sitting there reloading, talking trash the whole time, and
bouncing bullets off the walls.
And I'm loving his voice. It's I could go on forever. I'm gonna pass the mic because
Fair enough. Micah, how about you, man? How would you rank these?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with my least favorite because I do have them ranked here in front of me. I think that last hand-to-hand fight with Liquid is buns.
It's buns.
It's not good. I'm not above critiquing this game. It's the hardest boss fight in my opinion. I found it the hard. When I was a kid growing up, or 15, I guess growing up, I died on that boss a ton, an absolute ton. Yeah. I was either running out of time or just keep dying. Yeah. I do not like that boss fight. Still to this day, I'm not a big fan of it. So that's my least favorite one. Though if you love it, whatever. But number one's got to be Psycho Mantis for the reasons you already said, Logan. You already spelled it out. When he, for those who have never played the game, and again, think about an old PlayStation 1 and think about this kind of TV you're using, CRT TV with the kind of inputs and everything. All of a sudden, you're in the middle of the fight, boom. And by the way, you can't hit him. You're not doing any damage to the dude. Screen goes black. And at the top right, like it used to be, if there was nothing, if you had the TV on but there was nothing turned on, it would say video 1 or video 2 on the top right in like this green kind of colored font. Anyway, it said Hideo instead of video. Like just change out the V for the H. I was like, wait, what? And it does that for 5 seconds, beep, and then it does it for 5, come back to the game, and we're like, what?
So
did the game just glitch? Like, what was that?
Sorry, real quick, funny story about that. When I played that on the GameCube and got to that, I thought my TV broke, so I shut it off and turned it back on, and I felt the controller vibrate, and I'm like, oh, I'm dying. It took me a while to realize it was Psycho Mantis messing with me.
I think most fans know, but if you don't, you have to, what you're supposed to do is change the controller port from controller port 1 to controller port 2 so that Psycho Mantis can't read your mind, and then you could start doing damage on them.
Yeah.
The reason... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I was going to say the reason that wasn't at the top of my list is because I was robbed of that experience. My friend called me and said, hey, to beat the Psycho Mantis guy, just put your controller into the other port. I didn't get the codec messages. None of the intensity of that. Like, I didn't try to hit him I experienced none of that. As soon as I switched the controller, I beat him. I was so mad all these years. Hearing all these wonderful stories.
Well, man, I think you know what we got to do. We got to go find your friend and be like, dude, you got to apologize for what you did to Jonathan all those years ago. Oh, man.
But yeah, what they did in that fight and other boss fights, you mentioned some stuff with the Sniper Wolf fight. I don't know if this is kind of hard to consider a boss fight, but this kind of wraps into my favorite moments as well. But the torture scene where Ocelot gets you after the first Sniper Wolf fight, you are captured. Ocelot straps you to this electrical kind of torture device, and what you're supposed to do in it is he kind of turns it on. You have to just pump circle over and over and over and over and over again to build your health back up. And by the way, it is from that segment that I am so good at Mario Party games where you just have to pump A over and over again. I win those all the time.
Dude, same here. Between that and Star Fox Adventures doing the strength test, I'm so good at that to where when we were playing It Takes Two and my wife was like, why are you how are you so good at mashing the thing? I'm like, Star Fox has trained me, baby. I know how to do this. I'm good at this. I got this.
But that torture scene, I remember thinking it was legit hard, because that's the key point in the moment where you can get the good ending or the bad ending depending on if you succumb to the torture or if you kind of tough it out. And if you tough it out and you can pump circle fast enough, your arm really is hurting, genuinely, because you go through multiple rounds of this. And it gets harder and harder. And no joke, your arm's hurting. And so what Logan just said earlier about Naomi's hey, put the controller up to your arm, and she vibrates it, and it's like a massage thing, stuff like that. And then Otacon comes on with the ketchup and the handkerchief, and it's like, bro, lay dead, act like you're dead, ketchup, boom. I'm like, what? What are you even? My mind was at that point in the game, especially going through the torture thing, which is so out of the box, and then how you bust out of jail is you play dead with some ketchup. Who's doing this in video games? Nobody. Nobody's doing this stuff. It was completely new, and with it all wrapped in the presentation, the movie-like presentation that it's in, it all made it that much cooler. For the 15-year-old, especially me, I'm just over the moon by everything I'm seeing at this point in time. So yeah, favorite boss, Psycho Mantis, least favorite Liquid on top of Rex, and that torture scene, I would even call that a boss, and that just a bunch of fun memories wrapped in that hour of gameplay or so.
Yeah, right on, man. I would definitely. Man, I remember when I was younger, I remember that first fight with Sniper Wolf being super cool, because I'm just man, this is tense. I got to save Meryl, got my sniper rifle out. I'm trying to find her, trying to get a beat on her. And it's a sniper fight. It was super cool. But I can't, there's certain things in video games that live rent free in my head. And that fight with Psycho Mantis pops up every other week or so, because I'm that was just such a cool boss fight. And replaying it on the GameCube now, it's kind of one of my gripes about the game is the first person aiming is super sensitive. It's not very precise like what I'm used to with the games that have come out now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard fighting him because of that. But just the different mechanics it throws at you in that fight, it's like, this is nuts. That's like when, man, I feel bad for you not getting the experience of swapping the controller ports, man. Because I was sitting there playing it. I hadn't read anything about it. I was like, can I do that? Can I switch the controller port? Is he reading what I'm doing before So I went ahead and tried it, and it worked. I'm like, this is dope. I was on the GameCube, and it's got 4 controller ports. So there I am, like jumping to all 4 ports, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Did it again like a couple days ago. I'm like, man, I don't miss this. But at the time, it's really cool, especially when you don't know what's coming. And just there's so many different things. And in Twin Snakes, the pictures he throws at you, like each of the 3 pictures has the different head designers on there. So Kojima's on one of the frames. I'm like, that's right. Kojima. That's cool. It's just what a game, man. What a game.
And the whole when you beat Ocelot, talk to the Arms Tech president, and you're like, what's Meryl's frequency? And he's like, it's on the back of the CD case.
Yes.
I remember thinking, like, what's he talking about? Let me check my inventory. CD case. Where's it? I don't have a CD case. Oh wait. Yeah. Bro's talking about the CD case, the PlayStation case I bought from the store.
Yep.
Like, man, what?
That right there, I was just like, there's nothing beating this. I mean, I could not believe that they took that attention to detail. And then I go grab the case, look at the back of it, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Sure enough.
And I had a friend who borrowed the game from somebody, and he didn't have the case. So he had to go through every single codec number.
Oh no.
until he got the one that was Meryl's. I thought that was so hilarious.
That's good.
I'm trying to find it here in the game because I know oh man, I forgot what that character's name is. The general or whatever his name is. Because instead of saying on the back of the case, he says like, look in the manual or something like that on the GameCube. I'll have to look it up. Colonel something. It's not Roy Campbell. There it is.
Campbell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's got all the frequencies right in here. Why didn't I use this when I was playing it? This would have helped me out so much. Anyway.
How Micah had brought up I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to end it with like the only other fight that I really, really liked. And this is, I thought it was a fairly easy fight with Gray Fox, but like, oh, dude, it's so stinking cool. Like, I remember playing it originally on the GameCube. I'm like, dude, this is dope. Like, this is this is so cool. He's turning invisible. I got to find him. I got to get a beat on him. There's a GameCube on the desk. That's cool. There's a little Mario stuff hidden around the office. I'm like, this is super cool. My least favorite is definitely the Hind D, just because I feel like it's meh, But
man, I kind of like the Hind D. You're both hating on it, man.
I mean, it's cool,
it's
but like,
because I got my butt kicked.
I will say this: I don't really care for the fight with Liquid at the end either, just because of that like shoulder charge thing he does and like how much time it wastes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. But other than that, yeah, I think that's about it.
When you're in the cell, I don't know if there's a third way, but I know that if you mess up the catch up thing, like if you stand up and they see that, they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like eventually, if you wait long enough, like Gray Fox will come in there and he like cuts open he either cuts open I mean, it's him because it's like stealth camouflage and you see like the swinging sword, but he like opens the door or something like that. But then I was just like, man, Kojima thought of everything. Like when you fight Gray Fox, if you use your gun, he's gonna, he wants you to use hand-to-hand combat. And then when I realized you could throw a chaff grenade and it's messing his suit up, and I'll go there just
That's how I felt with the first Vulcan Raven fight with the tank. I didn't know the first several times I played the game that you can use chaff grenades, and man, that just takes out long range.
I didn't know you could use them.
Dude, it lets you get up close. It's like boom, chaff grenade. Then you can get up close to them and start chucking the grenades in there, no problem. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that, man. And I didn't know about using them for the cyborg ninja at first either. I was just like, let me use my thermal goggles and I'll punch him. That's how you do it, surely.
Yep. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But like, even though we're ranking these bosses as our favorites, like, to be honest, like, I think this is the only Metal Gear Solid game where I like every single one of the bosses, but for different reasons. Vulcan Raven I really like because his is the most kind of like philosophical when he's talking with Snake about violence and battle and all that stuff and their different perspectives on it. And we'll get into that later with the themes. But like Sniper Wolf is just cool, but like there's that respect between the two, between her and Snake of like being warriors or soldiers. And I mean, they're just cool for so many different reasons, man. It's a really cool game.
The acting was just like phenomenal, man. Just, each one of them, you would kind of hear their story, listening to Sniper Wolf talk about how Big Boss found her on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And, so when I played part 5, I was just waiting to meet a young Sniper Wolf. And when that didn't happen, I was kind of sad.
Who knows? She might have been in that rumored extra piece of content that got cut or didn't get finished, for all we know. But yeah. So something I do want to kind of ask y'all, because I was kind of curious about this, because the game is rooted in realism because it uses a lot of like acronyms and military terms that you hear said like even today. I didn't know that like DARPA was a real thing until like several years ago when I accidentally came across and looked it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. I was like, can Kojima do this in his video games? Can he use this? Is he going to get, but it does that, but it like plays with the supernatural stuff, like with Psycho Mantis, Vulcan Raven with like having the crow coming out of his head off of his tattoo, which is so stinking cool. So it delves into that, but like there's enough there to where it's like, man, this is kind of realistic. This is kind of scary because it's talking about nuclear weapons and how those are used and how they're used as deterrents, but that kind of instigates other forces and it's not necessarily a good thing. The subject matter is kind of heavy for the game, and I don't know that I necessarily really grasped it at the time when I played it on the GameCube because I was like, oh, cool, this is like an action movie, but there's some stuff that's rooted in realism. Did the subject matter kind of fly over y'all's heads when you first played this, or did you kind of like get what they were talking about? Micah, let's start it off with you this round.
Well, there again, going back to 98, I was 15 when I was playing this. And yeah, I think some of the themes, maybe I didn't grasp everything completely, but as far as the overall subject matter, talking about all the military stuff, the nuclear deterrence, all this kind of stuff, it was a little bit plot wise. It was right up my alley. Like, I was following everything and the twist at the end and all that stuff. I was down with. Some of it was just new to me. A lot of it was stuff I'd never really experienced before. So there was a handful of times where it would go to like these kind of historical looking, like real kind of live or not live, real footage, historical footage of like nukes being shot off and various things. And they would go into a lot of exposition at this point in time. The game would. Some people might call this kind of one of the down spots of the game as far as like they do a lot of exposition. Sometimes you're like, okay, this cutscene's like almost 10 minutes long. Back then that was really long. We know it went really out of hand in games following that.
Just wait until you play Metal Gear Solid 4.
Right. Put the controller down and grab your popcorn.
Yeah.
So it was just all new to me at the time, and it hit me at the right time in my life. I think I was ready for it. I was ready to soak all that stuff up, and no, I don't think it really flew over my head, quote unquote. It was right up my alley, and it was all good stuff. Yeah.
Right on. Cool. Jonathan, how about you? Did it fly over your head, or were you like, oh man, I get what's going on here?
I looked at it like I was watching a movie, so like if I'm watching like a James Bond movie, they might mention a lot of things that I might not understand the kind of the importance of it or how relevant it is, nuclear war and things like that. But, like Michael was saying, I understood it enough to follow the plot and, I wasn't lost on anything story wise, but I think because Kojima always has like a point. He always has personal, feelings and thoughts that he's expressing in his games. Like he's really big for that. And so I think I might not have caught on or understood that stuff at the age that I was at. But I learned a lot, learned a lot of terminology, and especially then you hear it later on in real life, like, wow, he like was really, these are real guns, real acronyms. I mean, he did his homework for real.
Yeah. And that's something that's cool, especially about playing these games, is how Kojima blends that realism into the games that when I first played, I didn't really fully appreciate it until I played through it again on PlayStation 1. I'm like, dude, this is like, it's a bare bones plot to a degree, but like you really feel like there's more going on here than what's being led on, especially at the end of the game when the different things kind of start falling down, like the chips start falling, where Snake realizes like, oh, his mission was not actually what he thought. The government actually tricked him into this mission to take these people out. And it's like, oh, snap. Well, how's Snake going to respond to this? And thankfully, you get Metal Gear Solid 2 and kind of get to see him, what's going on from there.
One thing, if I can interject real quick here, one thing that was so great, and I think is kind of what ultimately was alluring to me about this game, is that it treated the player like an adult.
Yeah.
And it just expects you to know things. And man, I just lost the anecdote I was going to use. Crap. Going back to Psycho Mantis, what it was. So as the plot unfolds and the DARPA chief, who's actually Decoy Octopus, dies in front of you, and there's that flashback. And they're like, and Liquid's like, you fool, you killed him, talking about the DARPA chief. Octopus accidentally killed him in torture. And they're all talking about everything. And it's like, boss, I have a good idea. And they go through all this plot of how to trick Snake, all this stuff. All that stuff was like, you didn't get it at the time necessarily, but you're like, what is happening? Like, it was just so intricately layered. And it was, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe listeners, whoever, it was Psycho Mantis that said that line, like, boss, I have a good idea. Talking about like, it was him that came up with this whole thing about swapping the DARPA chief, or swapping Decoy Optimus for the DARPA chief. And so it kind of adds like a layer of like, yeah, Psycho Mantis is awesome. Because in that scene, if I'm remembering correctly, it was him that suggested that to Liquid.
Right.
So it's just kind of like it respected the player, and it's just kind of like games weren't doing that back then. Like this is a game for not for kids, and not that it's crazy or hardcore or anything, but it's just like this is mature content. And it was just I had never experienced a game like that before.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people honestly hadn't. Like, this was in a way like the first of its kind in a lot of different ways. And I like that you kind of were talking about the layers of the game, because there's a lot of, the game is not only rich in terms of gameplay and mechanics and stuff, but it's rich in terms of the writing. I had mentioned this either in the pre-show or maybe earlier. I can't remember when exactly, but when I played through this game, again on the GameCube, I took a ton of notes. I'm not going to go over all of them because it's several pages. I was just like, man, this game is like awesome on so many levels. But there's several different themes that kind of come up, and I've put some of them in here, and I'm sure you guys have some as well. But one I kind of want to get into, because I talked a little bit about Vulcan Raven being a character that I really like, just because of the philosophy that he kind of gets into with talking about fighting or violence being a sport. And Snake kind of has this back and forth with him where he just talks about that. Oh man, did I put it in here? Yeah, here it is. He tells him that violence isn't a sport, because Vulcan Raven's talking big about how, our battle will be glorious and it'll be amazing and it'll be one for the history books and things like that. And Snake's just like, violence isn't a sport, and he's just kind of going through that. And he ties earlier into something he said to Meryl when he's talking to Meryl and trying to convince her to stay put and not follow him. And he's like, you've never killed anyone before. I need you to stay here because you don't know what you're doing. You're too weak. You're too green. And of course that upset her. But she winds up using her feminine wiles to change his mind. You gotta love Snake, man. He's a great spy, but he's kind of an idiot at times.
Oh, that Snake.
Oh man, Snake, yeah. But he tells her that killing without guilt leads to more carnage, and I'm like, dude, that is like when you think about this game coming out when it did, it's like that is such a deep line, right? Because you consider kind of what you're doing and who Snake is. Like, he would totally understand that, but it adds a layer to him where he's like, does Snake feel bad for the people that he's killing? Like, should I feel bad? Because I'm sitting here destroying people. I guess I should feel bad a little bit for these pixels. Maybe I need to start using the M9 and tranking these enemies and hiding them, and doing that sort of thing. But it got me thinking about how, like, because I played through Death Stranding last summer, and one of the things about that game is how surprisingly pro-life it is. There's a value to human life in it, and I thought Kojima was only doing that in Death Stranding. He was doing this all the way in Metal Gear Solid 1, where he's talking about how human life does have value. If you don't feel guilty for killing people, it's just going to lead you down a dark path that's going to get more carnage, and him saying violence isn't a sport. And I'm just like, dude, this has got me thinking deeply about how, kind of our society as a whole here in America, at least, is so desensitized to violence. We talked about The Quarry earlier and how there's that one kind of thing where I'm like, man, this is really kind of gross and graphic and, and some of the kills, I'm like, it doesn't sit well with me. When I watched Doctor Strange earlier this year, I was like, some of the stuff in this I don't feel comfortable with. This is kind of gross to me. And it kind of got me wondering, like, is our society as a whole kind of just desensitized to violence? And is that necessarily a good thing? I don't think we really need to spend a whole lot of time on this because we could go for a long time on it. But what do you guys think about Kojima adding this stuff in there and kind of getting the player to think? Jonathan, let's kind of start with you on this one.
I never really even thought about that. Those particular lines you picked out, I didn't remember hearing those as I was watching it today because I didn't get to catch all of it. But I mean, that's deep. Because if you think about it, in our day and age, somebody dies, there's video footage of it on Twitter.
Yeah.
People can watch it. Nobody thinking about the fact that this person has family members that have to relive this person's last moments. And I think that the more when something when something doesn't bother you as much, you do become desensitized to it, and it just becomes regular or normal. And and when certain things don't bother you, it's that's not a good thing. So I would have to say Kojima was, he was dropping some jewels, man.
Yeah.
Going to the pro-life kind of aspect of it at the end of the game, atop the Rex, when Liquid's dumping a lot of exposition to Snake right before he does that terrible boss battle with you. He's talking about Les Enfants Terribles, the Terrible Children project, which he and Solid Snake were. That was the project to get them created, and he talks about all the failed projects, all the failed children, basically, that came before them, and he speaks about it in a like a very awful light, like he kind of Liquid, and Snake. He's like look how terrible this was. Like look all they did just to get to us, and it was already cast in a negative light like that. Even for test tube babies or whatever, not even real children or whatever. So that kind of stuff, I think it speaks a little bit maybe to, just the Japanese culture and, where Kojima's from. And I don't know. It's, I love that, for Kojima, a lot of people, let me back up. I like that he interjects these little things about his beliefs. A lot of people don't like when people sort of interject and directors interject their beliefs into their art like this. But I think it's kind of, you can't avoid it. Like that's art. That's how it is. If you don't like it, don't go play it, or don't watch it or don't consume it. But what Kojima is putting in here, I think, is worth looking at, and yeah, there it's not huge through lines or anything, but you can see those hints, and I kind of wanted to speak to the pro life thing because Death Stranding is, oh man, they laid on thing. That's great. That's like the most pro life game that exists. I feel like is Death Stranding, and that game is kind of chef's kiss for that reason. But yeah, you can see some of the kind of beginning nuggets of that here in Metal Gear Solid as well.
Yeah, I just, man, that's one thing I love about like the stuff that Kojima does, or at least with Metal Gear Solid, and of course with Death Stranding. Like it's a game that, at least to me, is not only fun to play, but like it gets you thinking. And if you can create a game that is fun to play and also engages my brain, I'm like, dude, I'm all in. You know, it's kind of like I think some of my favorite anime, like Neon Genesis Evangelion. You know, there's parts of that like just gets me thinking. I'm like, oh man, this is deep. You know, and then there's other times I'm like, what was the guy thinking when he made this? This is a bit much, but with Kojima, it's kind of a similar thing. I'm like, dude, this is deep. And then there's moments where I'm like, dude, how did he come up with this? But I thought it was just, I mean, I don't know if this was like meant to be a commentary on violence in the world or anything like that. But I think it does kind of go with the theme of how they're talking about, you know, different regions and stuff having these nuclear warheads. There's even a thing at the end of the game that talks about how, oh man, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it talks about how like each country was agreeing to dispose of like the majority of their nuclear supplies and stuff. But then like at the time that the game was released, and even in the GameCube one that came out in 2004, it said like to this day, they actually have more nuclear weapons than that, or they haven't done it or anything like that. And I'm just like, dude, that's crazy to think about.
Well, one more thing to the violence point is that in the very next game, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, Kojima gives the player an option to play the entire game without killing a single soul, even bosses.
Oh, wow.
You
Really?
can use the trank gun. Yeah. And every single boss has 2 life bars, the regular life bar and the trank gun life bar if you decide to use the trank. So basically, and I remember back then that was a huge deal. I remember press was talking about that, like, oh, you can play the game without killing anyone, and how novel that was. So yeah, he 100% thinks about that sort of stuff, and he's like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if you could go through this hardcore action game and not kill anyone? That'd be a thought, huh?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it would bother someone to have to do this, but they want to experience the game. Maybe I'll give them an option. You know, so yeah, I think that's definitely on his mind for sure.
Yeah. I think one of the, oh my bad.
Oh no, go ahead, man.
No, I was going to say, I think one of the standout Kojima points I ever caught in a game was in Metal Gear Solid 3, and it was about perspective. You know, like who's really the bad guy in the conflict. You know, depending on which side you're on, your views are going to say, okay, well, this guy is the bad guy. Versus if you're standing on this side, you're going to say this guy's the bad guy. You know, and then when you see everything, not to delve off too deep into that, but when you see everything the boss did and why she did what she did and the lack of credit she received, I mean, it's just like. It's mind blowing. And he's always talked about nukes. I think I have to admit, I've always been one to not be, and this isn't a good thing, but not be as knowledgeable of the things that are going on in the world as I should be. So I think that, you know, I think I would be interested in maybe like, you know, once I play it again or finish watching the video, kind of even understanding at that time, you know, how were things with nukes in the world, or, you know, even now, because even in part 5, you know, he had a whole plot for people to disarm each other's nuclear weapons, you know, and so that's always been something big that he's pushed.
Yeah, and that's again goes to Kojima trying to make his games, you know, like again, kind of like what he said, if you can't trick people into believing this is real, then it's not worth making. And he blends things that we know and see and hear about into his games, and it just kind of gets you thinking a little bit. I just thought it was it was really cool, and it definitely kind of started making me feel bad about like shooting guys with the FAMAS or whatever it was. I'm like, man, maybe I should just start using the trank gun. But man, I think it just definitely is it's a good point to at least think about a little bit, and just kind of how we treat each other. Of course, this being TRG, it's a Christian run podcast. In case you didn't know from the last episode where we talked about evangelism and sharing the gospel. It's just my big thing is, man, we're created in the image of God. There's a sense of value and worth and respect that comes with that. Definitely am a huge pacifist. But I also believe in the right to self-defense and things like that. But like, man, I wish more games would have those options where you could take a more pacifist route. You could be a little more innovative with how you go about things. But that's kind of the thing. We like violence as a culture, and I think that's kind of led down some dark paths, as Snake said in the game. But I think overall, I think when we see it, we're like, oh, this is bad. So we at least know, because God's law is written on our hearts. We know that that's bad, but the question is, how do we solve that problem, so to speak? Mike, it looked like you had.
It's just funny because I talked about in Metal Gear Solid 2, like, Kojima gave you the option to not kill anyone. In that very same game, he also gave you the option to strap C4 to the back of a tranked guard's back and then blow them up. So you say, I don't know, take the good with the bad.
Kojima was like, do you want to play this game as a lawful good or chaotic evil? What do you want to do?
Exactly.
So there's a few other things I had on here, and but before I get into those, I kind of want to ask y'all, like, was there anything that kind of like stood out to y'all? It could be a theme, or it could be just something else that maybe we haven't covered with the game itself, that we haven't covered just yet. Michael, let's kind of kick it to you there. Is there anything that you kind of want to talk about specifically with this game?
Let's see here. I mean, nothing's crazy jumping out. One thing you had, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, Logan, but I'm looking at your line here about when Liquid says to Snake, you can't fight your genes. It's fate.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go next.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm
no, you're fine.
Stepping on your toes there. As far as that goes, of course, being of Reformed theology, we know that that our salvation is in the Lord, but yeah, of course. Of course, you can create your own story. And what one thing I will say about fighting your genes specifically is pay attention to that kind of stuff, because we are way more like our parents and our grandparents than we ever think we are or going to be or whatever. As the more I'm getting older, especially, the more I'm seeing like, yep, I'm my dad. I am my dad, carbon copy, and things of that nature, So while, we can all be our own person and stuff, we're a lot more like our parents and grandparents than we think sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, even to the point of like, I wasn't, there was like a period in my life where I wasn't around my dad a lot. So I don't think I was around him enough to pick up some of the mannerisms I have. Mm-hmm. But if I'm around him, I mean, it's like, it's like, good grief. It's like twins. Like, I see the way my sense of humor, and you know what I'm saying? So mm-hmm. I agree definitely with what Michael was saying.
Yeah, man, I heard this quote kind of in a different perspective than what y'all were saying, because in that moment they're talking about how kind of what they were made for, like what Solid and Liquid were made for, and they're made for battle and things like that, and you can't fight that. And man, I don't know. Like, I agree with what y'all are saying, because like same way, I'm like my dad, and then there's times where I'm catching myself.
Are we commenting on the Liquid Snake comment?
Yeah, the you can't fight your genes
thing.
Okay.
I was go ahead. I was kind of just agreeing to that sentiment, but I hadn't even really thought about my thought.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Okay, fair enough. I'll come back to you here in a second then. But okay. Like, man, I was sitting there thinking about it as they were talking about the end of the game, and I'm like, man, this is tragic, because it feels like, Snake is trapped in this cycle of just violence where he can't escape from it, because that's kind of what he was made for. They're trying to make this a super soldier. They're trying to recreate Big Boss. But I was like, I don't really like it because I think I don't like it because it gets me thinking about like some of the students I used to work with and how they would just kind of be like, well, you know, this is just how I was born, whatever. I'm stuck like this. I'm like, no, dude, you're not. Like, you don't have to, you don't gotta be like that, you know? And so I didn't like it because it just reminded me of that sort of thing where it's like people make a mistake or something like, it's my genes, you know, I can't fight it. That's who I am. That's how I was born. When I'm like, no, dude, you don't. It just sounds so defeatist to me. Like you just kind of given up on it. And I just don't like that because I really think, and unfortunately, that's kind of just, well, I don't know. I guess I'd have to revisit the other games and think through Solid Snake's story a little bit. But like, I really believe that if there's something that like you're struggling with or something like a habit you keep going to, like I fully believe people can break that, you know, and do better beyond that or something like that. And part of that is through Christ, you know. But even then, it's just like, I don't know. There's something about it that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, no, Snake, you don't have to keep getting used by the government and them tricking you like this, dude. Get out. And I mean, that kind of plays into Metal Gear Solid 2, but I won't go there, you know. But I don't know. I definitely didn't take it that way. But now that I'm thinking about it, you know, like I said, yeah, I'm my dad. I'm a heavy snacker. I'm a bit aloof a lot of times. I'm not very observant. You know, I'm definitely the spender between me and my wife, and she's the one that has to reel me in sometimes. And, you know, it's funny, Jonathan, you're talking about, you know, canceling some of those Power Ranger things. I'm like, bro, I need to cancel some of those Gundam things I got. You know? But yeah, I don't know. Kind of adding that in there do y'all have any other thoughts to add on that particular thing, or just kind of thinking through Liquid and Solids, kind of what they were built for, sort of thing? Anything to add to that?
Well, I will say this: playing this game, and it's something I wanted to bring up earlier, but playing this game after playing the other ones gives you such a different perspective.
Yeah.
Like if you think about Decoy Octopus, not Decoy Octopus, the DARPA chief being killed, and then when you find out who he is in later games, but there's already a plot twist related to it in that game. But once you find out later on, you're like, your head wants to explode. Like when I was watching, there's a part when Psycho Mantis dies and Snake takes his mask off, and Meryl's just like, let's kill him, like, you know, and Snake's like, no, let him talk. You know, like, this guy's dying. He's in his last moments. Like, you know, let's hear what he has to say. And he talks about Liquid Snake, and he says, you know, I was never for his whole revolution thing. And then I think about how, you know, in Metal Gear Solid 5, how Liquid Snake was essentially kind of using Psycho Mantis. You know, how he was in that one mission that was taken out of the game, you know, at the end of it, the two of them kind of just go off together. So they've been with each other since they were kids, you know. So, I mean, there's so many, like, even when there was something Vulcan Raven said about Snake, and he said something about his something to the east, or something about a snake to the east, or something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but then in Metal Gear Solid 4, they play that line when they reveal that the surrogate mother for Snake was Japanese. So they're referring to her being from like the eastern areas. I mean, there's no way Kojima could have been thinking about all this stuff at that time. I mean, or he's just like, his mind is just insane. But I mean, it was so weird playing it and knowing some of the stuff, you know, and just kind of realizing like, man, this is like watching Revolver Ocelot kind of play the background when in all actuality he's one of the key players in like all this stuff. And you get, you know, at the end of the credits, you get him talking and you're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, it's crazy. So I think with Liquid, man, he always had some resentment towards towards Big Boss and towards Snake, because I think he just felt like, man, like he was just destined for nothing.
Yeah.
He was just like, I don't know if he understood what the whole project was going to be and understood, or was always told you're the inferior one. And so he came up with that belief or that understanding. And so that's why he hated Big Boss, or that's why he hated Solid Snake. But I mean, people can have deficits and challenges, but it's when we use those things as a crutch and as an excuse. Yeah. Like you said, with us having Christ, the Bible says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, meaning that we don't have to be a slave to that. I might have a lineage of alcoholism in my family, or, but it doesn't mean that I have to continue to carry on that trait, So, I mean, I think that it gives you a lot of thought and a lot of perspective. I used to run away from things I didn't agree with, but now I'm more open to hearing and listening. Doesn't mean that I'm going to, accept it or, start to take it on as a belief, but it helps me to understand others better.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I couldn't tell if you had something to add there. I'm going to open it for you if you had anything.
No, just a closing thought, I guess, from me about the whole game is I think over on we talk about Colin Moriarty a lot, and he's got Last Stand Media, and over at Last Stand they have a podcast called Defining Duke. It's an Xbox podcast, and the co-host there, Cog, he always talks about hashtag just one games, talking about these single player narrative games that Sony seems to have in spades, like Uncharted and Horizon and God of War and all these very narrative heavy, high production value kind of games. All those games, every last one of them, owe their existence to Metal Gear Solid 1. Every single one of them. I think the landscape would be vastly... No, there would be games like that, but the way that Kojima blended the genre, the action genre, with the movie cinematics is still unparalleled to a lot of degrees. And going back again to what games were doing at the time, simply unheard of. It took a long time for any game to execute what Konami did and Kojima did with Metal Gear Solid 1. So it has a weight and importance in ripples throughout the whole industry that I think are just enormous. It created a whole kind of subgenre that is now my current favorite genre. It's what Sony has made their bread and butter on for an entire generation now, practically, with the PS4. And it continues to thrive and flourish. It can't be understated what he did for that and how he blended that. There again, you sit there and you're like, I'm watching a movie. There were good cinematic games out there at the time, like Resident Evil 2. That had already come out when this game was out. There was still nothing like this. Yeah. Shout out to Kojima for that, and for just how he's trend setting, man. I'm kind of gushing now at this point, but yeah, the industry has a lot to owe to Kojima and to this game in particular. This is the one that put him on the map. Yeah. That's it. I think that's a good story. I know there's more that we could probably talk about, but again, dear listeners, if you want to talk more Metal Gear, hey, we have a Discord, we have a Facebook group, we're on Twitter. Plenty of ways you can continue talking Metal Gear with us. I'm sure we're not going to be upset or shy away from talking about it any longer. But that's a good closing thought. Jonathan, do you have any other closing thoughts about Metal Gear Solid?
I couldn't agree more with the things that Michael was saying. It's a masterpiece. I would have loved a sequel in that same style. I miss a lot of the things, especially the codec, the drawing, that was just in the music, But here's to hoping there's a remake down the pipeline, top notch. I would love that. And if David Hayter's not doing the voice, I don't want to play it.
Yep. Yeah, not my Solid Snake, man. I hear you. I'm still a little salty that they got Kiefer Sutherland to voice Big Boss. I'm like, I get it, but I would prefer David Hayter because that's how I know him. It's like anytime people like get a new voice actor for Batman, I'm like, is it Kevin Conroy? No, okay, I don't care then because that's the voice of Batman.
Yeah,
and David Hayter is the voice of Solid Snake. The only thing I'll add is this right here. In 2020, during COVID and stuff, we were all locked down and stuff. I made it a point to buy an old GameCube because I wanted to play. I was like, man, I'm craving some retro games. And the first two games, well, this is kind of a loophole. So I guess one of the first games that I bought for my GameCube, of course, is Metroid Prime 1 and 2. Of course, come on, you all know me by now. Mm-hmm. The next game I got was Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes because I'm like, I can finally play this game. I can finally beat this game. I can play the remake or whatever it is and enjoy a more modern version of it. This is one of those games that just it's stuck with me over the years for a lot of different reasons. Some of the stuff is the philosophy that's injected into it. Other stuff is just because the boss fights are just insanely cool. This is definitely one of those games that, like, if someone were to ask me, like, all right, Logan, what are some games that I have to play? I'm new to gaming. What are some games I absolutely have to play? And I'm like, Metal Gear Solid is definitely one of them, and people tend to shy away from Metal Gear Solid because they hear like, oh, the story makes sense. It's a little confusing at first, especially when you get to 2, because man, is that game trippy. But when you start playing it and kind of piecing it together, you're like, oh, I see how all the pieces connect. Okay. This isn't Kingdom Hearts where it doesn't make any sense at all. This is Metal Gear Solid where there's a little more dots you have to connect with it. And there's some stuff that isn't revealed until a later game. Like, you're going to finish Metal Gear Solid 2, be super confused, jump to 3 where you jump back in time and play as Big Boss. And then you're going to jump back to 4 and be like, oh, now I get why I had to go into the past to understand the future, sort of thing. And so incredible series as a whole. And this game kicked it off and just kicked off a lot of different things. It changed the landscape of gaming in so many ways. And so yeah, highly would recommend this game. And as always, if you want to continue the conversation of Metal Gear Solid, social media links are in your show notes. But with this being our second, well, technically third episode of the month, this is our patron thank you episode. So we want to shout out all of our patrons over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers who have continued supporting the show through this month, have allowed us to continue to do what we do here at TRG, and we want to shout them out. And so, Micah, do you want to take the blue names and I'll take the red?
Sure, let's do it.
All right.
Aaron White, Alex Castellanos, Boulder, Brandon Buonacorsi, Cassie, Chris Freeman, Christopher Commander, Daryl Tavares, David Henderson, Derek Smith, Jake Walker, Jeff Jackson Jr., Jimmy Changa, John Hannon, Jonathan Harrison, Josh Broccolo, Kiefer Winborn, Clay Brandon, Kokoradaki, Luke Strain, Matt Edwards.
And rounding us out is Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Matthew Millsap, Melvin Benson V, Micah Hendrick, Michael Toller, Mr. Butts, Nate McKeever, Paige Penson, Retro Rewind Podcast, Richard Marroquin, welcome back, Ryan 1701E, Sam White, Savone Pena, Travis, Vincent U, Wesley Ray, Xavier Medina, and Yuki Ailey. Y'all, thank you for supporting us over on Patreon and continuing to help support the show. And also, if you're not in the Discord already, get in the Discord. There's a Patreon exclusive channel where you get a little more behind the scenes stuff where we can just kind of make fun of, we can't really make fun of Skinner because he has access to that channel, but you get the idea. We can have some goofs in there. So I have a lot of fun. But it wouldn't be an episode of TRG without Recos. So these are some things that you should totally check out. Jonathan, let's kick it to you, man. What should our dear listeners check out?
A good friend of mine, Nicholas Adams, just released his book, Xanthia. He's written 3 books, and now it's in a trilogy form. So as of yesterday, I believe, it's on Amazon Kindle for $8.99. The paperback is $29.99. Definitely check that out if you're into like fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, Willow, Chronicles of Narnia, swords, dragons, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely check that out. I actually be doing some music. We got some stuff planned down the pipeline for that.
Okay.
So yeah, look forward to that. And I would recommend Fall Guys. If you've never played it, it's free to play on all platforms, cross play. I think it'd be fun. Definitely, I recommend that.
Right on, man. It's funny that you mentioned your friend's book there, because I actually have the first book in that series sitting on my Kindle, sitting in my queue to read this summer. I just got to get through Stormlight first. Those books are so big.
I haven't finished reading it either. He knows this. I'm not much of a reader. But as far as I have gotten, I love it. Matter of fact, I got the first book right here.
There you go.
So y'all check that out. Xanthia. What up, Nick? Nick Adams. Y'all definitely check that out.
Right on, man. Now, I'm going to say this because you didn't say it. Y'all go subscribe to Sound of the Rain on YouTube. Yeah. He's got some music dropping soon. He's got some beats over there for you to listen to. Links will be in your show notes. Go drop a sub. And if you're on Twitter, go follow him over there too. Again, links to all that stuff will be in your show notes. Micah, you handsome baby-faced man. What's something our listeners should check out?
Yeah, continuing to recommend a lesser-known indie game since I've been on the show, and I'm going to continue that today with a game by a developer who developed the What Remains of Edith Finch. Giant Sparrow is that developer. Their game before that was called The Unfinished Swan, that originally released for PlayStation 3, and it's also for PlayStation 4, Vita, and it's also out on PC. But I want to make a special note for the Unfinished Swan because it doesn't get the praise and recognition that I think it deserves. If you have played What Remains of Edith Finch, which is a fantastic, I'll call it walking simulator for lack of a better term, a great story and narrative. If you are a fan of that game, you owe it to yourself to play The Unfinished Swan because, and this is a spoiler, but I'm going to go ahead and say it because no one knows it. Like, it's just no one knows it's a thing. The Unfinished Swan is a direct prequel to What Remains of Edith Finch.
Wow.
Wait, really?
Yes. The main character that you play or not play as, the main character that The Unfinished Swan revolves around is Milton, Edith's brother, whose house you come across in Edith Finch. And he has disappeared into the game that is The Unfinished Swan. He's not dead. He's the only one that didn't die of the whole Edith Finch family. And his story is this game. So what I'm personally hoping is that they've made the game for Milton. They've made the game for Edith. I'm hoping Giant Sparrow makes the game for Lewis, the other brother of the Finch family, the one that had the great, if you've played Edith Finch, the great scene or whatever you want to call it at the fish cannery is Lewis. So I hope they make their third game is about the third sibling is what I'm hoping. But The Unfinished Swan totally 1000% connects to What Remains of Edith Finch. And if you do the research, it is one of the all-time great video game stories, in my opinion. Edith Finch is in my top 20 favorite video games ever for this reason.
Okay.
And The Unfinished Swan is just part of that story, and it just doesn't get the credit like Edith Finch does. So I want to draw attention to it. It's not as good as Edith Finch. It's a different kind of game, but it's certainly worth your time. And sorry, that was kind of a long explanation to recommend the game, but I just kind of wanted to explain that. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, The Unfinished Swan.
Right on, man. Well, now I feel like I need to go finish The Unfinished Swan. I need to make it the finished swan. That's what I need to do. But yeah, man, I just remembered I have these soundboards. Dude, our editor is going to beat me up because I didn't use the soundboard the entire time. All right, I'll just prep myself for it. So my reco is I don't know what it is exactly, but I have been getting more and more into just like Japanese entertainment by way of just getting into Gundam. That's led into me watching more anime, like watching Spy X Family, which is a new show this season, which is if y'all are into anime and you haven't watched Spy X Family, you need to get on it. It is a cute and charming and hilarious show. It's one that me and my wife can watch pretty easily and just laugh at. And just there's a reason it's one of the more popular ones this season. But something I started kind of getting more interested in, I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to watch some Godzilla movies just because giant robots, giant radioactive lizard, like it's kind of a similar tie there, but I've just never really watched Godzilla stuff. And so I went and looked through iTunes. I was trying to find some Godzilla movies. I was like, I didn't want to watch any of the newer ones. I wanted to start with the older ones. And I found this Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. And I'm like, all right, I'll watch it, see how it is. And I sat there and watched. I tweeted this out a while ago. I have a hard time sitting down and watching movies, TV shows in general, just in one sitting, just because I get bored super easily, or I just my mind tracks to something else and I don't wind up finishing it. This is one of those movies I sat down and watched, and I watched the whole thing. I was like, this is cool. Like, there's so many different little. Something I love about these movies is the way they use like little miniature models to scale it up and put people in suits so they don't have to like use any CG, but like.
Yep.
The way that they use the lighting and everything to make it look authentic, I'm like, this is so cool. Just the stuff that they've done it. And Mechagodzilla is just a cool design. So it was fun to watch that. And it kind of blended both worlds of like Gundam and Godzilla to where I was totally enraptured. And then I remember watching Shin Godzilla several years ago because it was done by the same guy who did Evangelion. And I remember really enjoying that. So my two recos then are those Godzilla movies. Shin Godzilla, which Shin in Japanese is basically like the most powerful version of Godzilla, which is super cool, especially if you like Evangelion. Or if you want something a little more retro, Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. I think you'll really enjoy those, and they're a good time. But if you don't want to watch those, then I mean, you have other recos. You can go watch, listen to some of the beats over on Sound of the Rain's YouTube channel, for example. That'll be another reco.
If I can tie this in real quick with Metal Gear. The director of Godzilla.
Oh, in my brain, bro.
One of the newer Godzilla movies, Jordan Vogt Roberts, he is on tap to direct the Metal Gear Solid movie, which is in a little bit of production hell, but I think is actually going to finally get going. He is still the director, and he directed Godzilla versus King Kong kind of recently. Yeah.
And to piggyback off of that, he's doing a Gundam movie for Netflix.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were about to say. As a matter of fact, you can see my screen. My tab just says, because I was like, was it him? But yeah, Gundam movie director. But there's like a concept art for it. It's just a picture. But yeah, that's crazy.
Well, Jordan, he knows Metal Gear so well. So I'm very pleased that he's going to be directing it if it goes through. So if they get the green light, man, I'm ready for that MGS movie.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here thinking like, man, am I really about to re-up my sub for Netflix just so I can watch the Gundam movie? Dang. I'm so far down the rabbit hole now, guys, but that's a whole other topic. I won't spend any time longer. Jonathan, again, man, thank you for joining us on this episode, man. It's always a blast to have you. We got to get you on for Metal Gear Solid 2 now. We've all got to go play that, come back, try to talk about it, because that game, oh man, that game goes places. Oh my gosh, poor Raiden.
That's another one I had spoiled for me too. So,
dude, what have you had? Like just about every Metal Gear game spoiled?
It was my boss at my job, and the game that came out, we're playing it, talking about it, and he talks about, when you get to the second half, you play as this other guy, and the way he said it, he made it sound like you play for Raiden is about 10, 20 minutes, and then you go back to Snake. So imagine the whole time playing as Raiden, just waiting for Snake to come back. The whole experience was ruined.
I felt that way anyway, and I didn't know that. So I was waiting for Snake to come back the whole game.
Tell you what, Jonathan, before the next episode, you make a list of people that's ruined these games for you, or spoiled parts of these games for you, and we're going to go confront them in person. It'll be like
combat, huh?
It'll be like what's that channel that does the 90 Day Fiance stuff? It'll be like one of those things where we go confront people, and it'll be awkward but hilarious at the same time. It must be a thing. But yeah, anyway, dear listeners, again, if you like what we're doing here at TRG, you can support us over on Patreon. Links to all that will be in your show notes. If you want to connect with us, get some extra content, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Links to all that stuff will be in your show notes to our website, Facebook group, Discord channel, YouTube channel. Like I said, if you want to see me trying to clap away the animatronics at Five Nights at Freddy's or Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Import, whatever that dumb place is called. I hate that place. It's terrifying. If you want to see me do that, it's over on YouTube. If you want to see some Trails in the Sky talk, it's over there as well. It's a lot of different stuff. But with that being said, dear listeners, thank you for checking out this episode of The Reformed Gamers. And until next time, be a deer, keep it locked here, and we'll see you in the next episode.